So let's continue and improve upon the green tinting, and we'll load our material back up. We're going to use a Fresnel function here to help to improve the realism of the tinting. Now, we used a regular Fresnel node down here for refraction, but this time we're going to use a material function, and that's going to be the Fresnel function. So we'll right-click, search for Fresnel, and here's our Fresnel function. You'll see it has the bluish color of a material function, and if we double-click it, we can open up the node graph to see everything that's going on in here. So the first thing we're going to do is get rid of our base color here. Instead of using that, we're going to pipe our Fresnel function into the multiply here. Before doing that, however, our Fresnel is going to be piped into a LIRP node, so we're going to hold down L to create that. We're going to use the Fresnel for the alpha channel, which will drive the LIRP. And then we're going to have two color values representing the inside and the outside of our Fresnel effect. So let's go ahead and create those color nodes now. And then we'll pipe this one into the A input of our LIRP and the second one into the B. Let's go ahead and convert these two color nodes into parameters. The first parameter we're going to call Fresnel inner color. And then the second one, you guessed it, we're going to call Fresnel outer color. And this LIRP is going to be piped into our multiply node here. Let's go ahead and set the default values for these colors to white. Now for the Fresnel node, we have a lot of control here, but in this case, we're only going to be using the normal vector and the power input. So for the normal vector, we need to get a reference to the pixel normal in world space, so right-click and do a search for pixel normal WS. And then we can pipe that into our normal vector. Now we're going to need a scalar value that we can pipe into our power here, and we're going to convert this to a parameter and call it Fresnel power. And let's go ahead and set our Fresnel power to a value of 1. All right, let's continue on and set up our vertex colors to also be used to control the opacity. So let's just go ahead and delete the scalar that we have plugged into opacity right now. For that, we're going to use a subtract node. So I'm going to right-click and search for subtract, and then we're going to need a scalar value. So hold down 1 and pipe that into the A input of our subtract. Let's convert that to a parameter as well, and we're going to call it edge opacity. Now we can drive the B input of our subtract with our vertex color information. From here, let's add a clamp node to our graph. And this will allow us to control the minimum and maximum values of our opacity. So we're going to take our subtract and then pipe that into the clamp node. And we're going to set the values of our min and max clamp here under the details panel. I'm going to go with 0.1 for minimum and 0.95 for maximum. And then we'll drive that into our opacity input. Scroll down under the details panel to the translucency section and change the lighting mode to surface forward shading. Now before we go any further, let's go ahead and add our metallic and roughness parameters. Let's move these nodes out of the way, and we're going to need two scalar values here. We'll go ahead and take the first one into metallic and our second one here into roughness. And let's turn these into parameters. So we'll call the first one obviously metallic. And we're going to leave that value at 0. Then we're going to convert roughness into a parameter and call that roughness. And we're going to set this one to a default value of 0.02. Now we want to set the maximum for both of these to 1. Let's go ahead and save it and check out our results. Remember, this is going to take a bit longer to compile. So we can see our table here. It has changed. The edge is now white instead of green, and that's because our default colors for the Fresnel effect are white. So let's go ahead and tweak that. We'll open the material instance. Let's go through some of these settings in our material instance and make sure we're both on the same page. We're going to set our tint intensity to 0.75. Our edge opacity, we're going to set that to 0.6. We're going to leave metallic and roughness unchanged. For the Fresnel color, any color will work here. In fact, if you wanted to have a red tinted glass, you could certainly do that. But if you'd like to have the same basic coloration that I'm using here, just be sure that your red, green, and blue values for both of these colors are set as you see on the screen here. For Fresnel power, we're going to set that to a value of 2. And your table should look something like this. Let's go ahead and close down our material instance and get a better look at the current result of our table. So our table is starting to look pretty good, but there's a couple of other things we're going to add to it. First of all, we need to get some better reflections on the table. We're going to do that using what are known as planar reflections. You're going to find these in your modes panel, and then go to Visual Effects, and you'll find planar reflections. Let's drag one into the viewport. If you can't see it, press G on your keyboard, and you'll be able to see it. Now right now it's way too large, so we're going to need to reduce it in the scaling properties on its details panel. The final size for mine is 0.035 by 0.055, and it should be sitting right above the tabletop glass. In fact, we can pull it up just a tad here so it stops Z-fighting, and then we'll hit G to exit game mode. And now we can see that we have some more accurate reflections. We can clearly see the door being reflected in the tabletop there, and this is the benefit of planar reflections. Planar reflections work great for very flat surfaces such as this tabletop, but not so much for organic shapes. Just keep that in mind. At this point, our glass tabletop is looking pretty good, but we're going to continue to improve upon it in the fourth and final part of this segment, where we look at how to add a blurry or frosted glass effect.